And so, where else to start but my story? And this is personal, but what happened is my mom was misdiagnosed. She was bedridden for 2 years because someone made a typo on a medical form. What happened was she was diagnosed with a 3-centimeter aneurysm. She started walking to walls, crashing cars. Everything that made us think there was a problem. I went to a neurosurgeon to try to find out what was wrong. He said, it's inoperable. And I'm like, that's bad. After 2 years, and after I fired most of her doctors and got her off medicine, she's fine now. What it was only a 3-millimeter aneurysm, not a 3-centimeter aneurysm. And it was inoperable because it was too small. And it was a lithium overdose from her psychologist that was causing her to walk into walls. And so misdiagnosis kills 460 people a day. And I don't want this to happen to anyone else's mom. So I started looking at, how do you solve a problem like that? How do you solve a problem like misdiagnosis? How do you really go and help people? How do you save lives? And I found something called the X Prize. How many of you know what the X Prize is? A few of you. Okay. Well, I'm going to do a brief overview for everybody else in the room, please, for the rest of you to kind of follow along. So the X Prize is about making the impossible possible. And if that sounds like a lofty mission, it is. Because we're talking about changing people's lives, changing economies, creating new industries. So the first X Prize that you may have heard of was going to space and back in 2 weeks. And that might not sound familiar, but something like Virgin Galactic, you know, our commercial space industry. Well, this contest, this little $10 million prize, started in 2000. And in 2004, Spaceship One succeeded. And they were able to do that trip in 2 weeks. And then it became this little company called Virgin Galactic. What's interesting is they spent $100 million to win the $10 million. But I think Virgin Galactic probably covered that cost a little bit. But what interests me the most about the X Prize was the failures. And we don't think of Elon Musk as a failure. We think of Tesla, we think of PayPal, we think of all these things, and we go, but he can do anything. Well, SpaceX came from the X Prize. He originally submitted to be one of the contestants in the X Prize and failed. And in fact, the Dragon 2 moon capsule, the capsule that he just released, is the final completion of his X Prize journey, because it can go to space and back in 2 weeks. Now, the fact that he got a $1.6 billion NASA contract, I don't think he did so bad. But what does all this have to do with health? Well, one of the things that space kind of lets us know of is, you know, you're out there by yourself. And who's going to take care of you but you? So they opened up a new X Prize. This was called the Qualcomm Tricorder X Prize. And it's turning science fiction into science fact. And yes, it's that tricorder. You know, the one we grew up with. You know, Star Trek, the show that they say changed, I mean, it brought us our first space trip. You know, it brought us our cell phones, it brought us our iPads. It brought us all this technology that we use on a daily basis. But the one thing that never came out of it was the medical changes. You know, to be able to scan someone and say, hey, what's wrong with you? It wasn't a, let me scan you and I will send it to the home base and I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. It was, oh, you got something wrong, we'll fix it. So making the impossible possible once again. So what does the X Prize mean by when they call a tricorder? And it's not exactly like the tricorder that we're used to where you can scan someone. But what they're looking for is to be able to monitor vitals for 72 hours. That includes heart rate, respiratory rate, temperature, oxygen, blood pressure, all in a package weighing less than 5 pounds. So this is the standard ER vitals that people normally have. And diagnose over 15 diseases. Anemia, diabetes, stroke, pneumonia, hypertension. We've even had a partner come in for myocardial ischemia. So what we created was a team called Bioscare. And that team here between between Sarasota, St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando, Gainesville, Mississippi, and New York have put together an entry and become one of the final teams competing. So we developed a cloud-based analytics platform for wearable technology. What does that mean? Have you ever had a credit card, and they call you and say, hey, there's been an inaccurate billing on your card? Right. Ever have a doctor call you and say you've got something wrong with you based off of what's going on? And that's kind of what we're looking at, is that this technology exists. They know that there's irregular activity. Well, we can now put that into medicine. So meet Joe. He just left the hospital. He had a heart attack, high blood pressure. He falls in this high category risk for readmittance. That's a $26 billion industry right now. 65% of that, they said, is unnecessary. We can actually put a 30-day monitoring kit with him and do mobile outpatient cardiac telemetry, which is reimbursable by insurance. And that's just one of the use cases for this technology. And here's some of the stuff that's come out recently. The Samsung Watch, great, it does vitals. New Apple's Health Kit from yesterday, great, it does curation, it grabs all your stuff. What we do is interpret. So we need these companies, because they grab all the information for us so we can run our algorithms to interpret what's going on. So we put together a team of, actually, I got about 17 people working with me. We're a startup company. We have partners from Emergency MCG who do coronary artery disease, Human, that gives us 45 years of mathematical models of human algorithms, applied relevance for big data. But out of 300 teams that applied for the X Prize, we're one of only 21 official teams left. And the final 10 teams will be announced in August. So what we need is we need your help as a community. Again, I'm Tracy from Intention Technology, but Bioscanner is bigger than me. We have companies coming in, and there is medical experts in this room and in this community that can come together. So as we're doing our human trials and we're trying to make it to having our prototypes done for February, we got a long list of diseases here that we have to test. And I need people with all of those. We got non-invasive testing, but I got a lot of people I need to test. Thank you. And I haven't already been in touch with Tom Esselman, but yes, the Institute for the Ages is a great resource. And that's what we're looking for, is the resources around the area here and people who are willing to make connections.
Tracy, what's your background?
My background, I have an MIS degree. I used to import technology from Europe, Budapest, Russia, that did a version of medical diagnostics. It was not FDA approved. I used to do tech support. And so I sit on the phone with people, and I go, oh, really? That's working. And I found that I had equipment sitting in my garage I could diagnose in 30 minutes, but it took a doctor 2 weeks to diagnose. And that just didn't seem right to me. And it was like, but what do you do with that? I didn't have a medical background, I didn't have the PhD behind my name, there's all of these things that reasons why I couldn't. But then you have that entrepreneurial spirit and you go, why not? And if I'm not going to do it, who is? And then when everything happened to my mom, it just really gave me more of that burning drive to make something happen.
Great presentation first, but do you plan on making a device, making an analytics platform, both, and what's the real take from your team on Apple's announcement yesterday? So that's pretty cool.
Well, the announcement was only 2 minutes, so to repeat your question a little bit, because there was a few in there. Are we a device manufacturer or an analytics company? We're an analytics company. Because right now there are there's 97,000 health data apps out there. There's about 1,000 different devices, and there's about 600 APIs for different devices that are on the market. And honestly, I still don't think a lot of them give me the data that I want, but I've been in touch with companies at MIT and other places that are just skin patches, wearable, other things. And so as the wearable market's moving, even the Samsung Watch gives me the vitals I need for the X Prize. And so what we really focus on, what we're good at, is the analytics. Is that a good enough answer?
Yeah, great.
Cool.
Is the analytics platform for the consumer, or is that go to the doctor to make that diagnosis?
Good question. So is the analytics platform for the consumer or just the doctor? And I'm going to say a little bit of both. The X Prize is a consumer-oriented program. Now, we really think that our secret sauce lies in a business-to-business play, and being that engine that runs behind a lot of other programs. But in that, giving people a little bit more access to their data. I mean, one of the goals of the X Prize is it's 2 o'clock in the morning and your child's sick. What do? Do you go to the emergency room? Wouldn't it be nice if you had something that you could just pull out of the closet and go, yeah, I don't have to go anywhere.
Is this something you're looking at integrating with the EMRs also?
Yes, absolutely. So when we get to the doctor part, is getting that EMR integration. So what we're doing is predictive algorithms based on vitals and signs and symptoms right now, but the EMR integration is going to give us that patient history, which will give us the better algorithms.
How you started this was because your mom had input wrong. So even though this is a maze in itself, how does that problem, which was manual input, get taken care of?
It's that second opinion. It's that constant, see what we're doing is constantly doing a continuous rolling diagnosis that never really stops while you're using the equipment. So it's, if you get one misdiagnosis, it's followed up with again. So what happened is she was misdiagnosed and then kind of put in a bin and was never given another chance to get a different diagnosis. And then the people that she was talking to didn't know thought she had a different diagnosis. And so a lot of the problem she had was in her head. Because the doctors were looking at the scripts that said 3 millimeters and said it's inoperable. And we're looking and thinking that that's bad because we heard 3 centimeters.
You're basically an analytics company and not a product company, right?
Correct.
So your long-term goal, do you want to ultimately influence the device makers to get a standardized product from where you can derive analytics? And if yes, what does the device look like?
The device looks a lot more advanced than the stuff we see right now. So what is the future roadmap of wearable devices, I think is a good answer for the question. And right now, a lot of people, when they think of wearables, they think of a pedometer. They think of something that tracks their movement, which is great. And the stuff that Samsung released starts tracking your vitals. You can say your heartbeat. You can start moving this. The future of wearable devices gets into measuring motion. So we're not only measuring brainwave activity right now with the existing wearables, but when we start measuring emotion, now we can measure your heart rate, slight changes and variations in your heart rate, change in your skin temperature, changes in the way you're holding your body. All of that now tells you what's going on. Because 75% or 80% of all chronic diseases is caused by stress. 75% of all of our healthcare expenditure is on preventable chronic diseases, and that's somewhere around $2 trillion. So when we start looking at, okay, $2 trillion is preventable chronic diseases, and 80% of chronic diseases is caused by stress, we need to figure out how to deal with stress. And I think that's really where wearables go, because then you have something that's going to work on a daily basis.
Excuse me. I know telemedicine is becoming a big thing in people in rural areas, that sort of thing. I'm curious how the medical community is embracing this kind of technology, because it will keep people from having to go to that emergency room or that your doctor's appointment. Are they embracing that?
What's happened with the Affordable Care Act, no matter which way you land on it, is that it's come from a situation that preventative medicine now pays. And so the problem is there was never a payment for preventative medicine. But now if you don't have to see a doctor, you can, that physician, that primary care physician, can still make $1,000 a year off of you. And so if he just has all of you as clients, but you don't ever see him, that's $1,000 a piece. And so that's where you start getting into this, where it starts paying to make things well. Especially when you get payers like Florida Blue and other companies in here that start looking at the numbers and they're going, wait, now we need to be able to manage our bottom line, and we can do that.
You were talking about stress causing a lot of different health problems, but from like a behavioral medicine aspect, a lot of this stuff is not cut directly after you're done. You have to be professionally specialized. How is analytics something that you can't just make a scan and say, yep, they have this, they don't have that, and then also the side effects. That's change, blood pressure, is all that consideration?
Yeah, 2 questions, 2 parts. Part 1, are all of your vitals and everything else taken into account or your blood, your medicines or medications that you're on take into account while we're doing measurements. Yes. We actually measure two parts of measurements. We measure you against you and you against trends. So the idea is if you have high blood pressure, I don't need to tell you every day that you have high blood pressure. The doctor can do that. But if you got a fever and your respiration starts changing, I want to tell you that you might be getting sick, so you can make a change now and not get sick. And that's the type of personal analytics that we're looking at, kind of like Nest for the human body. You know, so that we start to know you and know your behavior and what's going on. And so whatever medications you're on, that's part of that algorithm. Okay, so but then also looking at comparing your trends to, you know, database of about 1 million simulated measurements too. Okay, so that means the first part was, what was the first part of the question?
A lot
Sorry.
of behavioral medicine.
Okay, yeah, behavioral medicine, right. And so a lot of behavioral medicine, diagnosing mental disorders and those types of things, is farther than what I'm talking about right now. What I'm looking at is just measuring the slight changes of when you walk in and you see your kids for the first time that day, you'll have an emotional response. And seeing those trends, seeing the trends of road rage while you're driving. Or a few people have talked to me and they said, oh, so I can tell when my wife's in that mood, so I know to bring flowers home. You know, that's the type of emotional measurement that I'm talking about. Not necessarily, you know, identifying behavioral issues or antidepressant or something like that. Because I'm saying, what these things are the collecting the information to work with doctors. I'm not trying to replace doctors. But computers are really good at pattern recognition. What we want to be able to do is how do we help doctors do the pattern recognition so the doctor can do it their best at. And the doctors get really good at when they look at, they can identify what's really going on and use their knowledge.
So when you come to the doctor and you're like, this is the diagnosis that I have, how reliable are the doctors saying like, okay, I'm going to rely on this and I'm going to look further versus, well, that's not a doctor's diagnosis, so I don't agree with it.
Right. Well, the FDA comes around with some of that. And so that's part of where the process of getting FDA approved for this. What we're looking at for that piece of talking to a doctor and communicating with a doctor is a 7-day annual exam. So right now you have a 7-day annual exam. That sounds kind of weird. But the idea is, can we give you a snapshot of your life for 7 days? So we'll send you a box of wearable technology, something that you wear every day, maybe something that you wear once a day, like a blood pressure cuff or something like that. And then in that time, we can track your sleep, we can track your activity, we can ask you questions, we can collect your symptoms. So all that stuff that a doctor normally gets 5 to 10 minutes to do, we can do over a course of a week. Give you a nice infographic, show you all the stuff that's going on with you, so that when you sit down with the doctor, now the doctor has meat. He has something that he can look at and go, oh, we're not necessarily at that point diagnosing. What we're doing is helping collect the information, curating, if Apple would call it that way, so that you can then better communicate with the doctor.
Tracy, preventative medicine is something that's discussed a lot within practice. So can you further describe the mechanics of this? Because are you collecting data and is the process reactive or is it proactive? How it helps the patient identify something going on?
That's a good thing. So preventative medicine in itself is a challenging space. People have been trying to sell it for years. They sell vitamins that are good for you, but we don't take them. Weight loss is good. I can probably use some. You know, there's a lot of things with preventative medicine that's out there that's challenging. So I guess there's a proactive and a reactive part, where the idea is that we're trying to identify trends before they happen. So like with myocardial ischemia, coronary artery disease, heart attacks, what we can do is potentially diagnose that or identify that up to 2 weeks early. And that's through one of our partners who is FDA approved that can do it at 98% accuracy.
So does this require the person wearing some sort of monitoring device 24/7, or do they do it once a week and then do they do it once a month?
And that's one of the reasons why we're not necessarily building wearable technology right now, because wearable technology is getting so small and so infant. You're going to see it where you will be wearing it all the time, and that's going to happen. But it's right now, could you do that? That's why we're looking at a 30-day version and a 7-day version, because instead of trying to tell you to wear something for the rest of your life, if I can get you to wear something for a week or a month, that's a better idea. But yes, if you had something that's giving data a little bit at a time, I think that still works. It's just trying to find what's the next fit.
So for the X Prize, they had a few slides, and then one of the slides was actually identifying diseases.
Uh-huh.
From what I understand, it seems like there's actually 2 stages to this. There's the base analytics platform that has to be able to pull all the useful information from these wearables. And there's another part that actually has to identify that there's a disease involved. progress. And what you were saying earlier is that your future hope is that doctors can take this data and make their own inferences off of it. Do you see those as two different pieces?
I do, and they are, and you were paying attention, and you get a cookie. So, in there, what we currently use is a Zephyr Life System Monitor, which measures your heart rate, temperature, respiratory rate, pulse oximetry, blood pressure, and we're using the NeuroSky, which is the stuff that we pioneered at the University of South Florida, and that actually measures brainwave activity in response to symptoms. So what we're looking at there is we're actually looking at, can we get an objective measurement of symptoms? Because symptoms are always something that's very subjective to people. And we're looking at going, well, if I ask you questions, how do I know what I'm getting is the real deal? Okay, and then now I can get a magnitude with how much that symptom is actually bothering you. And so we can get, so to get the differential diagnosis, to get that complete picture, we're using some brainwave activity and even some urine test strips for some of these things.
How's it going, Tracy? Curious, it sounds like a lot of this is around the X Prize and everything. Are you expecting to go further than the X Prize? Are you going to be a business? If so, what's the business model? How does it scale on the road?
Thank you, great question. So I thought about, when I originally came to pitch, I wanted to pitch Intention Technology and say, you know, great, we have this analytics company that's working with wearable technology, and we were just invited to the AARP 50 Plus seminar, and we just did the American Telemedicine Association Venture Summit, where we applied to HealthBox and a few other things. But what I really wanted to do is really look at how do we make this a community event, and really get you guys to work part of what we're doing. So Intention Technology is a startup company. We are backing and fully funding right now the X Prize Challenge. We're currently looking for sponsors to help make us through to the next level. We're looking at immediate revenue models like shipping out existing wearable technologies. And so what we've developed is some systems where we can use commercial off-the-shelf technology kind of matched with our algorithms and software so we can get a product to market relatively quickly. So thank you for that. It's a great question. But really, what I've looked at is what I saw at the X Prize, it really saw as an opportunity to bring the international spotlight home. You know, we were all talking, you know, you hear the talks all the time, from MediFuture up in Tampa, Sarasota, St. Pete. You know, we've got most of the medical device manufacturers in the country right here in St. Pete. You know, and it's looking at, you know, how do we start uniting as a team to go after something this big, to really solve a problem like disease and save people's lives. And it's more than just me. I'm just looking at how do we help bring people together, from doctors to clinics to hospitals, you know, people who know people at some local hospitals and love introductions, and really going, how do we help put this together so that in February, we're delivering 30 prototypes that are going to be, you know, changing the way this works, and building a great company. Because we're not stopping whether or not the X Prize wins. I mean, when you talk medical, $10 million really isn't that much.
If you are running a race, where are you in that putting that team together? Are you at the very beginning, midway? How far along are you with the team?
Well, we have a team of about 17 people. We are, I would say, beyond midway. We're a little light on the medical professionals, actually. So one of the challenges that we have is I can actually see my software come up with a diagnosis of anemia, but I don't have a doctor sitting there to be able to tell me that this person has anemia. And so if I had a stream of patients that a doctor had already pre-diagnosed and we were non-invasively be able to come up with the exact same diagnosis and under human studies from the university, that would be a really great opportunity for us. You know, there's also some programmers and data people that we like.
Privacy. Financial privacy.
Mm-hmm.
Who is my information being shared with? You said your wife, you'd be able to know what your wife's mood is.
Right.
So I don't want my husband to know what my mood is, so I let him down.
Absolutely. So data privacy becomes one of the biggest challenges in any innovation in healthcare. And it was explained to me this way. If you've met two people, a used car salesman and your doctor, who do you think would know more about you? The used car salesman. The used car salesman has a credit report, he knows what you're wearing, he sees you, you know, he's been trained in these personal dynamics. The doctor usually sees you in scrubs and only sees you for a few minutes. Okay, or you're wearing a gurney or whatever they call it. And so getting that information and sharing it. So what we were talking about when I talked about sharing information with people was maybe the social aspects of wearable technology, which isn't directly the medical stuff. So what I like is an idea that you own your data, and you decide who you're going to share it with. If you want to share it with a caretaker, if you want to share it with your doctor, if you want to change doctors, unshare it with one doctor and share it with a new one, great. If you want to share it with your insurance company, maybe you get discounts. Those are things that you can decide to do, but I think you should ultimately be in charge of your data. And I think with the changes that we've had in genetics and everything else that's going on, I think one day we will find that that medical data is going to become very valuable. I mean, companies like Entogen right here are even showing right now that medical data can be very valuable. And so if you own that data, that actually becomes almost a bank account that you could have to have all this consistent data when you're dealing with companies in the future.
You said you were looking for people to help you, because you're looking for a bunch of volunteers, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how does that work then? People say,